I was just a waitress, working my way through graduate school, when I served a billionaire about to spend $100 million on what I immediately recognized as a fake document. I risked everything to stop him. "It's a forgery," I whispered. "How can you be sure?" he asked. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know, what's your dream job? Share it in the comments and subscribe for more stories like this. Now, let me take you back to the night that changed my life forever. The dinner rush at La Bernard was always busy, but that night carried a different energy. I was carrying 3 plates of the chef's signature dish when my manager Marcus pulled me aside. His face showed both excitement and fear. "Tina, you'll be handling the Rothschild room tonight," he said, referring to our most exclusive private dining space. "Very high-profile client. Everything has to be perfect." "Of course," I replied, though my stomach sank. Private dining meant long hours, and I still had a paper on Renaissance art authentication due the next day, completely untouched. "I'm serious, Tina," Marcus pressed. "This client could make or break us. One slip, and we're all out of work." I straightened my uniform, checked my reflection in the hallway mirror, and nodded. At 24, I'd been working at La Bernard for 2 years, saving every dollar for my art history degree at Columbia. The irony wasn't lost on me. I spent my days studying masterpieces and my nights serving food to people who could buy them outright. The Rothschild room was the jewel of the restaurant. It could seat 12, but was set for 4 that evening. Crystal chandeliers bathed mahogany paneling in warm light, while oil paintings on the walls were worth more than most homes. As I checked the settings, I glimpsed the guests through the half-open door. 3 men in tailored suits were already seated. But it was the 4th man who made me pause. Harrison Cox. Even someone living paycheck to paycheck knew his name. One of the world's most successful billionaires. Cox was famous for his extraordinary art collection, kept in a private, museum-grade facility few had ever seen. "They're ready for you," Marcus whispered nervously. I walked in with my practiced smile. "Good evening, gentlemen. I'm Tina, and I'll be your server tonight." As I served the first course, the tension in the room became clear. This wasn't just dinner. The other 3 men, dealers or experts, no doubt, treated the documents in their briefcases like sacred objects. "The provenance is unquestionable," one of them said as I poured wine. "It's been traced through 6 collections spanning 4 centuries." "And the authentication?" Cox asked. 3 independent experts verified it. Ink analysis, parchment dating, calligraphy, everything checks out. I tried not to listen, but certain words pulled me in. Authentication, provenance. These weren't just terms, they were my world. During the second course, one dealer opened a climate-controlled case and carefully lifted out an ancient manuscript. Even from across the room, it was breathtaking. Illuminated letters in gold and deep blue, the kind of medieval artistry that made my heart race. "Gentlemen," he said with pride. I nearly dropped the plate in my hands. The Codex Aureus of Saint Amorum was legendary, a 9th century gospel manuscript stolen from a German monastery during World War II. If authentic, it was beyond price. "The asking price," the dealer continued, "is $100 million. Cox leaned in, studying the manuscript with the focus of a man who had built one of the world's most valuable private collections. "Nay, I examine it more closely." As the dealer moved the manuscript toward him, I caught my first clear look. The illumination was stunning, the gold leaf flawless, the artistry convincing. To most, it would appear authentic, but I wasn't most people. I was the granddaughter of Dr. Edmund Bailey, once among the world's leading experts on medieval manuscripts, until a brilliant forger destroyed his reputation. That forger, Victor Clove, created works so perfect they fooled museums, collectors, even authentication specialists. My grandfather had spent the rest of his life trying to expose him, but, without proof, his claims were dismissed as bitterness. But he'd taught me to see what others missed. Clove's subtle trademarks, the details that revealed his hand. As I stared at the manuscript, I saw them all. The gold leaf was too uniform, too flawless. Real medieval scribes, with primitive tools, left small irregularities, imperfections that carried the mark of human craftsmanship. The manuscript was machine perfect. Even the ink color was wrong. Clove often made his blues too vibrant, the result of using modern pigments that did not exist in the 9th century. To most people, it looked more authentic than a genuine manuscript. But to anyone trained to see the signs, it clearly pointed to forgery. The calligraphy sealed it. The letters were flawless, too flawless. Medieval scribes always left consistent small errors, an uneven E or a D. Clove's work was precise in ways no human hand could achieve because he used modern tools to create an idealized version of medieval writing. I stood frozen, watching Harrison Cox prepare to spend $100 million on a forgery. My grandfather's words echoed in my mind. Tina, when you know something is wrong, you have a duty to speak up, no matter the cost. But the cost here was enormous. I was a waitress interrupting a $100 million deal, involving some of the most powerful men in the art world. They could think I was unbalanced, or worse, that I was interfering with hidden motives. Cox reached for his pen to sign the purchase papers. I couldn't let it happen. Before I spoke, Cox looked up, noticing me standing still. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. The men turned toward me, some annoyed, others surprised. "I apologize for interrupting, but I believe that manuscript is a forgery." The silence was crushing. One dealer even laughed. "I beg your pardon," Cox asked, his tone calm but firm. "The manuscript, sir, it isn't authentic. It's the work of a forger named Victor Clove." The laughing dealer's face darkened. "This is absurd. Who is she? How dare she?" Cox raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes remained fixed on me. "What's your name?" "Tina Bailey, sir." "And what makes you think you can authenticate a medieval manuscript, Miss Bailey?" My grandfather was Dr. Edmund Bailey, once one of the leading experts on medieval manuscripts. His reputation was destroyed by Clove's forgeries. I learned from him how to recognize Clove's work. Recognition flickered in Cox's eyes. Dr. Bailey. Yes, I remember reading about him. He made claims about forgeries in the art market, claims dismissed because he lacked proof. "He was right," I said, "and he taught me how to see the signs." "This is ridiculous," another dealer cut in. "You have 3 expert authentications," I replied, my voice steadier. "But they didn't know what to look for. May I show you?" Cox studied me a long moment, then nodded. "Show me." With shaking hands, I pointed to details. "Look at the gold leaf," I said. "It's too uniform. Real medieval scribes left small variations. This is machine perfect." He leaned in, examining closely. "And here," I continued, pointing to a section of text. "The blue pigment is far too bright. This ultramarine shade wasn't available in the 9th century. Clove used modern pigments because they looked convincing." "But the most telling detail," I added, my voice gaining strength, "is the calligraphy. These letters are flawless. No human scribe writes with such mechanical precision. Clove used modern instruments to create this imitation of medieval script." Cox inspected the manuscript again, more intently this time. "These are very specific points," he said. "How do you know so much about this forger's techniques?" "Because my grandfather spent his final decade studying Clove's work. He taught me every detail, the differences between genuine medieval writing and Clove's fakes." "And you're certain this is his?" "I would stake my life on it." The dealers were visibly upset, but Cox seemed lost in thought. Finally, he looked up. "Miss Bailey, please wait in the hallway while I speak with these gentlemen." My heart sank. I had likely crossed a line and would be dismissed. Still, at least I had tried to stop a fraud. I waited outside for what felt like hours, though it was only 20 minutes. Then Cox appeared alone. "The dealers have left," he said. "I postponed the purchase until further authentication." "I'm sorry if I overstepped," I said. "I know it wasn't my place." "Miss Bailey, if you're right, you saved me from a $100 million mistake. If you're wrong, I've missed a chance to acquire a priceless artifact. Either way, I need certainty. How will you get it?" "I'll have experts examine it, people who specialize in detecting forgeries. But I want you there." "Me? I'm just a graduate student." "You're also Dr. Edmund Bailey's granddaughter, and you've just identified details 3 recognized authenticators overlooked. I want your perspective." 3 days later, I stood in a laboratory at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, watching as experts subjected the manuscript to every possible test: spectroscopic ink analysis, carbon dating of parchment, microscopic study of the calligraphy. Cox stood beside me, his focus as sharp as at the dinner table. After 6 hours, Dr. Cora Parton, the museum's chief conservator, delivered the first results. "The parchment is from the correct period," she said, "but the inks contain traces of modern synthetic compounds. And the calligraphy." She paused, studying the high-resolution photographs through a magnifying glass. "Miss Bailey, could you show me again what you noticed about the letter formations?" I pointed out the mechanical precision, the absence of the natural variations that define genuine medieval script. "Remarkable," Dr. Parton murmured. "I've worked in this field for 20 years and overlooked these details completely. The forger's skill is extraordinary." "Victor Clove," I said quietly. "He's been producing forgeries like this for decades." "We'll need additional tests to be certain," Dr. Parton said. "But based on our findings so far, I believe Miss Bailey is correct. This appears to be a highly sophisticated forgery." Cox turned to me, his expression unreadable. "It seems I owe you a considerable debt." "You don't owe me anything, Mr. Cox," I replied. "I just couldn't watch you be defrauded." $100 million, Miss Bailey, he said. "You saved me from losing $100 million to a con artist." The final authentication report arrived a week later, confirming what I had suspected from the start. It was so skillful that it had fooled 3 expert authenticators and nearly convinced one of the world's most knowledgeable collectors. Cox called me personally. "Miss Bailey, I'd like to meet with you to discuss your future." "My future? I have a proposal. Could you come to my office tomorrow afternoon?" Cox's office occupied the top floor of a Manhattan skyscraper with sweeping views. But what struck me most wasn't the view. It was the art. The walls were lined with pieces I'd only ever seen in textbooks. Monet's water lilies, a small Picasso sketch, what looked like an original Van Gogh drawing. This wasn't just an office. It was a private museum. "Impressive, isn't it?" Cox said, noticing my reaction. "This is only the overflow. My main collection is in a facility in Connecticut. It's incredible," I said, examining a medieval manuscript that was clearly authentic. "Miss Bailey, Tina, I want to offer you a job," Cox said. "A job?" I asked, unsure I'd heard correctly. "I need a curator for my collection. Someone with your attention to detail, your knowledge of authentication, your ability to see what others overlook." "Mr. Cox, I'm honored, but I'm still in graduate school. I don't have the credentials." "You have something far more valuable than credentials," he said. "You have instinct and training from one of the greatest authentication experts alive at the time. Your grandfather may have been discredited, but he was right about Clove." "Wasn't he?" "Yes," I admitted, "but I've done some research on Clove since our dinner. My grandfather wasn't the only expert who suspected him. There have been quiet rumors for years, but no one could prove anything. Clove's forgeries were too convincing, and he was too cautious." "What are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I want to hire you not just as a curator, but as an investigator. I want you to help identify other Clove forgeries in the market and restore your grandfather's reputation by proving he was right all along." I don't understand. Why would you do that? Cox walked to the window, looking out at the city. Because the art world depends on trust, Tina. When forgers like Clove operate freely, they destroy that trust. They steal not only money, but history itself. And you think I can help stop that? I think you're uniquely positioned to do so. He said, your grandfather trained you to see what others miss. That's rare, and it shouldn't be wasted serving food to people who wouldn't recognize a masterpiece if it was in front of them. What exactly are you offering? A full-time position as curator and authentication specialist for the Cox collection, he said. Starting salary of $100,000 per year, plus benefits. I'll also pay off your student loans and fund the completion of your graduate degree. I stared at him, stunned. $100,000 was more money than I had imagined earning, especially right out of graduate school. There's one more thing, Cox added. I want to establish a foundation in your grandfather's name, the Dr. Edmund Bailey Foundation for Art Authentication. Its mission will be to train the next generation of experts to recognize and prevent art forgery. You would be its first director. Tears welled up in my eyes. My grandfather had died, believing he was a failure, his life's work discredited. The thought of restoring his reputation and honoring his legacy with a foundation dedicated to fighting forgery was more than I had ever hoped for. Mr. Cox, I don't know what to say. Say yes, Tina, he said. Help me build something that will protect the art world from people like Victor Clove. Help me make sure what happened to your grandfather never happens to another honest expert. Yes. I said softly. Yes, absolutely yes. Over the following months, my life transformed. I left my job at La Bernardine and moved into a beautiful apartment Cox provided near his Connecticut facility. The Cox collection was even more impressive than I had imagined. Thousands of works spanning centuries and cultures, housed in a climate-controlled facility rivaling any major museum. My first assignment was to review every piece in the collection for potential forgeries. It was painstaking work, but I loved every moment. Using my grandfather's techniques combined with modern analysis, I identified 3 pieces that bore signs of being Clove forgeries. 3 out of over 2,000, Cox said when I presented my findings. Better than I see it. And they're relatively minor works, worth maybe $2 million total, not the $100 million I nearly lost. Still, it confirms your grandfather was right about Clove's reach. 6 months later, the Dr. Edmund Bailey Foundation launched with a gala attended by experts from around the world. I gave a speech about my grandfather's work and his dedication to preserving the integrity of art authentication. Dr. Bailey always believed that when we authenticate a work of art, we are not just confirming its price, we are preserving history itself. Every authentic artifact reflects the people who created it, the time they lived in, and the culture that shaped them. When forgers produce counterfeits, they are not only stealing money, they are stealing our link to the past. After the gala, an older man approached me. He was neatly dressed but walked slowly, showing signs of age and illness. Miss Bailey, he said in a heavily accented voice, I wanted to speak with you about your grandfather. Of course. Did you know him? I asked. The man gave a faint, regretful smile. In a way, my name is Victor Clove. My breath caught. He quickly added, I know what you're thinking, but I'm not here to cause problems. I came to apologize. Apologize? I asked. I'm dying, Miss Bailey. The doctors say I have perhaps 6 months. Before I go, I want to make amends for the damage I caused. I stared at him, uncertain what to say. This frail man had been the source of my grandfather's downfall. Your grandfather was right, Clove continued. I forged dozens of works, and when he tried to reveal the truth, I used my connections in the art world to discredit him. Why tell me this now? I asked. Clove's eyes welled with tears. Because I want to help you finish what he began. I kept record. 2 weeks later, Clove kept his word. He handed over meticulous records of 47 forgeries spanning 30 years. each with details of its current location and the collectors who owned it. "This is extraordinary," Cox said as we reviewed the files. "Some of these works are in major museums, others in private collections that may never admit they were fooled. But at least now the truth is documented. What should we do with this?" "I want to contact every collector and institution," I said. "They deserve the chance to have their pieces properly authenticated, and I want the world to know that my grandfather was right." Clove's confession became international news. Museums quietly removed pieces from display for re-examination. Private collectors discovered that works they cherished were, in fact, fakes. The art world was shaken, but ultimately grateful for the truth. Most importantly, art history texts were revised to acknowledge his pioneering role in forgery detection, and the techniques he developed became standard practice in labs worldwide. A year later, I was invited to speak at the International Conference on Art Authentication. Standing at the podium before the leading experts in the field, I thought of my grandfather's words, that truth always finds its way to the surface. He had died believing he had failed, his work dismissed. But he had been wrong. The truth had surfaced, and his legacy was finally honored. Yet this story was not only about restoring his name. It was about our shared responsibility to protect the authenticity of art and history. When we authenticate, we are not simply doing a job. We are safeguarding culture itself. After my talk, a graduate student approached me. She reminded me of myself just 2 years earlier. Passionate about art history, but uncertain how to build a career from it. "Miss Bailey," she said, "I'm writing my thesis on Renaissance forgeries. Does the Bailey Foundation offer internships?" "We do," I answered with a smile, "and we would be glad to work with someone who shares your passion for the truth." Watching her face brighten, I realized this was perhaps the greatest gift Clove had left me. Not only a career, but the opportunity to continue my grandfather's mission and prepare the next generation to defend art from exploitation. The waitress, who once served expensive meals to wealthy collectors, was now recognized as one of the leading authentication experts in the field. More importantly, I had restored my grandfather's honor and built a foundation that would continue his fight for truth in art. Some of the most defining moments in life come when we choose to speak up, even when the cost seems high. That night at Leonarden, I risked my job to prevent a fraud. In return, I found a purpose, a career, and the chance to honor the man who taught me that truth is always worth defending. An extraordinary story of courage, family legacy, and the value of speaking truth to power. What about you? What's your dream job? Share it in the comments below. And if this story of hidden expertise, vindication, and integrity inspired you, remember to like the video and subscribe for more stories about finding purpose and honoring those who came before us. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.